You mentioned girls' education. This is the first time that we have the Girls' Opportunity Alliance and the leaders together, which is cool. Our mother is someone who really emphasized equality and equity and worked hard on behalf of women and girls. Can you talk a little bit more to these leaders about what you think that they can do to increase participation and equity for women in government and education and other spaces?
Well, a lot of you are already working on these issues, and you heard, I think, from Michelle and Julia, the visit they made in Vietnam to, Yanda was there and some other people. It was a terrific reminder that there's still so many places where young women don't have opportunity and their own parents don't think they should get an education. And from a government's perspective, if I were the head of state in any country around the world, I'd look at the statistics, and it turns out that one of the best indicators of whether a country is developed or not is how does it educate its girls and how does it treat its women. And typically those countries that do a bad job on that are backwards and behind economically. So, and it makes sense because, by the way, even though this shouldn't necessarily be the case, women are still doing most of the child rearing. So if you are not teaching a woman to read, it's less likely that that child is going to read. And if you have an educated mother, then those children are going to be educated. Which, I have young staff who are either have just gotten married or have been thinking about getting married. I always tell them, you better think about that's going to be the mother of your kids. So if they're cute but stupid, that's going to be a problem later. I'm just letting you know. That's not a that's not a good trade-off.
I'm sure none of your staff are interested in cute but stupid women, are they?
Well, you know what? I'm not going to get in their business on the stage. But so we know this is true. I think it starts obviously with education. For the young women leaders who are in the audience, though, even if you've had a great education, even if you've had some good role models, something Michelle talks about is that there are probably still some internal things that you're dealing with that you have to overcome. Because the culture is a powerful thing, and it's transmitting a bunch of messages even when you don't know you're getting it. So when I was in the White House, for example, I started noticing about 6 months in that we'd have these conferences around the Situation Room or in the Cabinet Room where we're trying to debate these very important policies. And the women who were on my senior staff, oftentimes they weren't talking in meetings. And I knew they actually knew more than the men. But the men, they'd be like, well, Mr. President, and they'd just have all their opinions. And the women would just sit there. And so after a while, I would have to call. I'd have to say, Christy, what do you think about that? Or Melanie, you worked on this issue. What's your perspective? And then when they spoke, they had amazing insights. But just the small habits of being a little less assertive in meetings or a little more deferential oftentimes meant that they weren't heard as much. And in fact, we joke about this sometimes. Sometimes a woman would make a point, and then like 10 minutes later, a guy would make the same point.
That is so annoying.
And it was like, I'm sorry, she just said that. What do you? So I make that point because I think it is important then for women leaders themselves to monitor. Are you censoring yourself or shrinking your own perspective or influence? And if you are, then you have to you don't have to be suddenly rude and talking all the time. It just means that you're mindful that you need to make room for yourself and space. And for the men in the room, if your organization has no women leadership in your organization, then you're probably part of the problem and you need to be part of the solution. So you need to also check yourself and monitor what you're doing in terms of the areas that you control.